بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، والدعاء على الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Bismillah. Firstly, apologies for the long break. I had been unwell, but inshallah ta'ala we continue where we left off, which is the section. So first of all, we begin with fiqh today, inshallah ta'ala, as is usual. We begin with the section on water. We're continuing our discussion on water, that which can be used for purification, and that which cannot. And we made it clear what we mean by purification with regards to ritual purification for wudu and ghusl. Now, so this discussion now is with regards to how do you pass judgment over water which has been mixed with other things. Now, when water mixes with other things, how do you know whether the water can still be used or not? Now, again, we need to be clear in our minds with regards to what we're using the water for. There are two separate things which we use water for. Now, there is one with regards to cleaning impurities from our body. Now, say some impurity fell on your body and you need to clean it. This is not ritual purification. This is not wudu or ghusl. This is just cleaning. Yeah, cleaning yourself of um, um, impurity. This is not to do with wudu or this is not to do with ghusl. So, for example, if you had wudu and you are changing the diaper of your child, and some impurity falls on you, this does not break your wudu. There's an impurity which you now need to wash off. Okay, so the water which you use, or whatever it is that you use to wash this off, is not the same ruling as the water which you need to use for wudu and ghusl. Okay, the water which you use to wash off impurities from yourself, from your clothes, or from any other thing which you need to clean from impurity, an actual impurity, is just that this thing that you use, the liquid that you use, is flowing and it washes away. It washes away, it carries away the impurity. It needs to flow and carry away the impurity. So long as it does that, it can be used for washing. So long as it does that, it can be used for washing. Okay? So, for example, say you use vinegar to wash something. Now, vinegar flows and it carries away impurity, and it is used as a cleaning agent as well. There is no problem. We can use vinegar to wash away. You don't need to now wash it again with water. Now, because this is not ritual purification. Ritual purification is wudu or ghusl. These are ritual purifications. Now, so for just washing away impurities, you can use any liquid that flows and carries away impurities. That flows, so that you cannot use oil. Why? Because oil, even though it flows, it does not carry away impurity. It makes everything stick. Now, oil cannot be used. But any liquid which flows and carries away impurities, removes impurities, can be used to wash impurities. But it cannot be used for ritual purification. Ritual purification is that which you do as wudu or ghusl, which we'll discuss. Naam. So how do we know? So that is separate. So that which you use for for cleaning is separate. Now what we are talking about, so anything which is not impure in and of itself can be used for cleaning. Anything which is not impure can be used for cleaning. But for pure ritual purification, it needs to not just be pure, it also needs to be purifying. Like we mentioned in the previous session, which has been some time ago, pure it needs to be purifying in and of itself, meaning it must be water. You can only use water to do, you cannot do wudu using vinegar. You cannot do wudu using rose water. You cannot do wudu using milk. Now, so that's what we're going to talk about today. What happens when this fresh natural water, which we use to do wudu and ghusl, if this water is mixed with, happens to mix with something else, can it still be used or not? Firstly, if the water is mixed with a solid substance, now, if some solid substance falls into the water. Now, when mixed with a solid substance, the water is overwhelmed when it loses its thin and easy flowing nature. Now, the only instance when you can no longer use the water is that the water stops being flowing. It kind of becomes like a cream or solidifies. It no longer is water. It doesn't flow anymore. Now, it becomes viscous. It becomes viscous and it no longer flows anymore. In that case, you cannot use it. Now, so for example, um, now there's so much sand fell into the water that it's become basically um, just mud now. It's just mud. Yeah, you cannot use it. But if sand fell into the water and it's at the bottom and on top, as it is water, khalas, you can still use it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now, even if there is a little bit, even if it's slightly brown in color, some of the sand has mixed, but the water is still flowing, thin and flowing. Now, it doesn't affect now, the ruling on the water. It can still be used. So for example, in a lake, say for example, there's trees over the lake and leaves have all fallen over the lake. And again, the water is full of the smell of the leaves. Doesn't matter. You can still use it. Now, if our water retains its flowing nature even after mixing with a solid such as saffron or fruit or tree leaves, it remains permissible to use even if the water loses all its qualities such as color, taste, and smell. So even if everything changes, so long as it's not been cooked with it. So for example, if tea leaves fall into the water and you cook it now, it's become tea. It's no longer water. You can no longer use it for wudu or ghusl. But if something, so all of these are hypothetical scenarios. So in your mind, you must not think like, wow, these are like weird examples. The weird examples are there for you to bear as principles in your mind. So any scenario you might come across in your life that you know, okay, I can still use this water, or no, I cannot use this water anymore. Now, the scenarios are there to illustrate principles, not to tell you, this is something which this might happen, so this is what you do in certain scenarios. Hanafi fiqh doesn't work like that. You will learn principles which you learn to apply in your day-to-day life on the basis of which you can determine, this is something I can, this is valid, and this is not valid. This is something I can, and this is something I cannot do. Now, so any solid which falls into the water. Say even a bar of soap falls into the water. Now, and its color, taste, and smell, everything changes. You can still use it. You can still use it because it was something solid and you didn't cook it with it. Now, if you cook tea leaves, now it's become tea now. And you've not cooked it with it. So, for example, you say you cut apples and you put it in water. because you don't want the apple to brown, to oxidize. After some time, when you take the apple out, the water has the smell and taste of apple. Doesn't matter, you can still use it for wudu and ghusl if you want, if you needed to. As a general rule, something so this the ruling is if something solid falls into water. And again, we're talking about when we talk about water, we're talking about a small body of water. Small body of water is um 5 meters by 5 meters. Now the area which is equivalent of 5 meters by 5 meters. Obviously, this excludes large bodies of water. Large bodies of water, the ruling applies only to the place where something is present. So, for example, there are many places in the world where sewage enters into the sea. That doesn't mean all the ocean, the entire ocean in the world is impure now. Now, only where in the places where there is that present, that impurity present, there it will take the ruling of being impure. That doesn't mean the entire oceans of the world have become impure. Now, um, are you not able to see the slides? The book. Is there anyone who's not able to see the slides? Aqib, are you not able to see the slides? The book. Anyone? Are you able to see or not able to see someone? I can see it. Naam. Bismillah. Naam. Others can see it. Please check your device, please. Naam. Um, so in large bodies of water, bodies which are bigger than 5 meters by 5 meters, impurity is only where it is present. Now, impurity is only where it is present. So, for example, so let's say there is sewage coming out into a river. I'm only in the place where the impurity is present. You can it can you can identify impurity being present. That's where it's impure. So, for example, upstream definitely is not impure from the place where impurity enters into the river. Upstream from that place, definitely it's not impure. Definitely not impure. And any place where there is no impurity cannot be identified, either through taste or smell or sight, khalas, then that place again is not impure. Impurity is only where it is present in large bodies, i.e., bigger than 5 meters by 5 meters. This is, we are talking about smaller than 5 meters by 5 meters, small bodies of water. And again, the impurity will come to that as separate. These are not impurities. Now, solid substance meaning a substance which is not impure. If a solid substance which is impure falls into it, it will make the water impure immediately, which will come to later. Here, by solid substance, we mean that which is not impure, like a bar of soap is not impure. Leaves, tea leaves, not impure. Saffron, not impure. All of these things are pure. Anything which is not impure is by default pure. Now, everything is pure except for things which the Sharia says is impure. Except for things which the Sharia has determined are impure. Okay, which we'll come to. We'll come to. So this is to do with solids. This is to do with solids. Any questions? Any questions? No? Tamam. The next one is to do with liquids. Now, with regards to liquids, the consideration as the attributes, the the effect which this mixing has on the attributes of the water. And there are three attributes to water. Now, you have so water does not have any taste. Not normal water does not have taste, does not have smell, and does not, you cannot see anything. It's transparent. So all these three attributes are attributes of water. It has no taste, it has no smell, and it has no color. You don't see anything. Now, so when it mixes with another liquid, now we see the effect that this liquid has on these three attributes. Okay, so it depends on this. Now, so it depends on this liquid which is mixing with the water. What is the nature of this liquid? So it is possible that a liquid can have just one. So there are four scenarios possible. A liquid, the liquid mixing with water also doesn't have any of these attributes. It also doesn't have any taste or smell or color. It's possible that it can have one of these attributes. It's possible that it can have one of these attributes. Say for example, um, um, say like a syrup which may not which may look like doesn't have any color, like a medicinal syrup, a cough, whatever syrup. It may not have any color, look like water, and it may not have any smell also, but when you have it, it has taste. So it has one attribute. Or some other liquid which doesn't have any taste, which doesn't have any taste and doesn't have any smell, but it might have color. So it's possible, nam, so it can have one attribute. So it can have no attributes. It can have one attribute. It can have two attributes, any two attributes, or all the three attributes is possible. So we leave the one which doesn't have any attributes. We'll come to that. That's the next scenario which we'll look at. So if it has, so some liquids, so as there are some liquids which have two characteristics, such as milk, which has color and taste but no smell. So even if at least half of these attributes manifest, that means it has dominated over the water. Say for example, a liquid has one attribute, okay? One attribute, like we said, the syrup, okay? Only has taste, doesn't have smell or doesn't have color. So if it falls into the water, and you can, and you cannot, if you cannot taste it, so when you taste the water, you cannot taste the syrup. That means the water is still water. But if so much syrup has fallen into it, now that you can actually taste it, yeah, now that you can actually, so or you can actually taste it. So now, khalas, the water can no longer be used because it's no longer water now. Because the syrup has overpowered the water, has overpowered the water now. So if something has only one, if a liquid, the liquid mixing with water has only one attribute, has only one attribute, and that attribute manifests, then khalas, the water can no longer be used for wudu and ghusl. Now we can still use it for washing, cleaning, that's fine, but you cannot use it for wudu and ghusl. Now, you cannot use it for wudu and ghusl. No, you cannot use it for wudu and ghusl. That's scenario one. If the liquid mixing with water has only one attribute, if it manifests, it cannot be used. If it does not manifest, it cannot be used. If it has two attributes, say the syrup had a color as well. Say the syrup had a color as well, but no smell. It fell into the water. If either the color or the taste manifest, if either the color or the taste manifest, then the water can no longer be used. Because at least half of the attributes have manifest. Because half is one. If at least one of them manifest, then khalas, the water has been overpowered. Then you can no longer use it for wudu and ghusl. If both of them manifest, then obviously it cannot be used for wudu or ghusl. It no longer remains purifying. It no longer remains purifying. It remains pure but it's not purifying. Now, pure is pure in and of itself. It's not become impure, but it cannot be used for purifying, ritual purification. Now, it cannot be used for ritual purification. But um, if the liquid has three characteristics, now all the three characteristics, it has color, taste, and smell. Color, taste, and smell, and it mixes with the water. Now, it has color, taste, and smell. Say, for example, shower gel. Now it mixes with the water. It has mixed with the water. Now, or a liquid soap. It has color, taste, and smell. Mixes with the water. It has three attributes. If just one manifests, the water can still be used for wudu and ghusl. If just one of these attributes manifests, it can still be used for wudu and ghusl. But if it has mixed to a certain extent that at least two attributes manifest, now more than half of the attributes have manifested. So it has overpowered. So overpowering is on the basis of which one overpowers the other one. So in the case of the liquid mixing with water, the water overpowers the liquid so long as the majority of its attributes are subdued, are overpowered by water. So if majority of its attributes do not manifest, that means water has overpowered it and it remains water and you can still use it. But if this liquid, which is mixing, if majority of its attributes, half or more of its attributes manifest, that means this liquid has overpowered over the water and you cannot say it's water anymore. So if the liquid has only one characteristic, if that characteristic manifests, khalas, then you cannot use the water for ritual purification. If the liquid has two characteristics, then if at least one or both the attributes manifest, you can no longer use it. If the liquid has three characteristics, all three characteristics, if one manifests, only one manifests, you can still use it. It's still water because water has subdued the other two characteristics. So it's still in the majority. Whereas if two or more of the attributes manifest, then it can no longer be used because it has overpowered the water. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Any questions? Yes, does that make sense? Any questions? Tamam. Yeah, just one second, please. Naam, 1 second. Bismillah. Naam, Bismillah. Afwan. Apologies. Naam. Um, so what happens if the liquid which is mixing with water also doesn't have any attributes like taste or smell or color? In the case of water mixing with a liquid substance which has no characteristic to it, such as previously used water, so water which had already been used for wudu, it's not become impure, it's been used for wudu. It cannot be used for wudu again. It's used water. Water which has been used for ghusl cannot be used again. Such as previously used water or rose water that has lost its smell. Yeah, rose water which has lost its smell, so there's no taste or smell or color, nothing. Now, then it is assessed by weight. So then it is assessed by weight. Um, so depending upon what is greater, it will take that ruling. So, for example, as is seen here, if two measures of used water mixes with one measure of fresh water, then you cannot use it anymore because the used water has overpowered the unused water, the fresh water. But if it's the other way around, it's allowed. So, for example, like especially this was the case previously, when especially in the subcontinent, like people would take shower, would have their shower in using water filled in buckets, in pails, in buckets. We should be mindful of water falling back into the bucket. Now, especially if, like, for example, someone has some impurity on their body which they're washing off. If they have any impurity on their body which they're washing off, and this falls back into the bucket, this impurity, this water which is washing off the impurity, has become impure. And now all the water in the bucket has become impure. So, what you're doing is basically continuing to wash yourself with impure water. So, you have not washed yourself. Yeah, you've not washed yourself. You continue to remain impure. And if that was a ghusl, then it's not a valid ghusl. So this is something you need to bear in mind. So, for example, if you're like cleaning yourself, you using a place where water has been collected, like a bucket, you should be careful of what water is falling into it. If you're washing off yourself, or you're bathing a child, and there's impurity, that impurity falls into the water you're using, then that water itself becomes impure because of the impurity. It's a small body of water, and even the smallest amount of impurity falling into it makes it impure. Whereas if you're just doing wudu or just having a ghusl and there's no impurity, so the water falling in, if the water falls back from your body into the bucket, it's used water. And that's okay so long as the proportion of the fresh water in the bucket is greater than the used water which has fallen in. But if there's more water from your body fallen in than the water present in the bucket, then and all of it takes the ruling of the used water. So these kind of things you need to pay attention to with water mixing with other liquids. Water mixing with other liquids. Now, so this is the scenario where the liquid mixing with the fresh water itself doesn't have any attributes. In which case you go by proportionality in weight or volume. Now, the fourth type is filthy or najis water. This is a small quantity of still water into which an impurity has fallen. The water is deemed impure even if no trace of the filth appears therein. Even if you cannot, so say, even if like a single drop of urine were to fall into a barrel of water, khalas, the entire barrel is impure now. Even though you cannot find any trace of it, even though if you can't find any trace of it, it's impure. Now, like we said, a small quantity of water is considered as less than 10 arms and by 10 arms length, and an arm length is roughly half a meter. So that's basically 5 meters by 5 meters. Now, so any impurity which falls into a small body of water makes it impure immediately. Makes it impure immediately. Now, what is impurity? Now, we'll discuss that inshallah ta'ala. Very, like in simple terms, impurity is anything which comes out of the two orifices, the front and the rear, of the man and the woman. Anything which comes out of the two, both of those are impure. Any liquids or solid which comes out is impure. Um, blood is impure. Blood, of the blood of any living being is impure. Not insects, but other than that, any living being is considered to be impure. Um, the pig, in and of itself, the entirety of the pig is considered is impure. Everything to do with the pig is impure. With dogs, the saliva and the wetness on the nose, the saliva of the dog and the wetness of the nose is impure. Um, um, the generally is now a mouthful of vomit, or more is impure, is impurity. Anything which comes, anything which leaves the body, like pus, anything which exits the body from like a wound is impure. Obviously including blood. So there are other impurities as well, but we'll come to them later. These are the general kind of impurities which one will come across. Um, Now, alcohol which is made from um, um, alcohol which is made from grapes is impure. Grapes and dates is impure. Najis. Um, um, so any of these things, if they were to even be present in a small quantity in the water, will make the entire water impure, the small body of water, even if you cannot make out any trace of it. Now, if, however, an impurity falls in running water and the signs of filth appear in it, then it is deemed impure. The signs or traces of filth are taste, color, or smell. So if impurity falls in running water, this is what we said, like in a river or a stream. Um, when if it is so long as you can see any sign of this impurity, then that wherever that sign of impurity is found, that water is considered to be impure. Say for example, there is sewage being dumped into the river from one side of the river, but on the other side of the river, even downstream, there are no signs of impurity. You cannot see any sign of impurity. So there the water is considered to be pure, because there's no sign of impurity present and it's a flowing body of water. Water is flowing, running. Now, even in the case of a lake, for example, if impurity is being dumped into a lake, and it's a large lake, it's a big lake. On the other side of the lake, there is no impurity present. Yeah, you can do that, no problem. Now, or you see like a dog drinking from one side of the lake, doesn't matter. You can do wudu on the other side, so long as it's bigger than 5 meters by 5 meters. Um, the fifth type of water is that which is doubtful with respect to purifying other things, and not with regards to its. Again, this is the point. No, not with respect to its actual purity. So again, the point you're making is there's difference between something being pure and something whether it can be used to purify. Whether it's purifying in and of itself. The water which a donkey or a mule has drunk from is doubtful. And what to do with that, we will discuss next. Uh, um, there are conflicting evidences with regards to whether it is permissible or impermissible to use that water. Water which a donkey or a mule has drunk from. And a mule is that which is born of a female donkey. From a horse, male horse, and a female donkey. Now, so the ruling with regards to So, leftover water. Leftover water, say someone or some animal has drunk from water. What is the ruling of using this water? What is the ruling of using this water? The first type is water that is pure in and of itself. Now, this water is, there's no issue with it. It's as though, khalas, it's fresh water. What is it? The water that a human drinks from. The water that a human being drinks from, provided there is no filth in his mouth at that time. Now, no, there's nothing haram in the mouth. A human being, doesn't matter if it is male or female, Muslim or non-Muslim. A human being, if they drink some water or they drink some water, basically the point is their saliva is not najis. The human being's saliva is not najis, is not impure. So long as there is nothing haram present. Now, if there is something haram present, then it is because of that that the water will become impure, not because of the human being. Okay? So the water that a human being drinks from is pure, i.e., the saliva of the human being is pure. And this is one of the things which is present in our culture, especially in the subcontinent, that food that is eaten by men is not touched by women, or food that is eaten by women is not touched by men, and so on and so forth. Um, that this might be a cultural thing. This is not a religious thing. So long as it's not in something which invites fitna, there's no fitna in it. You should not waste. Food must not be wasted. So long as it can be used in a beneficial manner, it must not be wasted. So it's just because someone ate it from it, you don't throw it away now. You don't throw it away. Okay. Because the saliva of the human being is pure. It's pure and it's not filth. It's not filth. So if a woman drank from something, from a bottle or something, and there is no other water available, it's fine for you to drink from that. But in a manner in which there is no fitna, there is no intermingling, and there's no things like that, the water itself is fine. The food itself is fine. There is no problem. Now, this is a cultural thing. It's not. It's not. It's not from the Sharia. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Okay. So basically, the point is the saliva of the human being is pure. It does not affect the purity of the water. The water can still be used for purification. And no doubt, drinking is of a lesser degree than purification because there are a lot of things which you can drink which you cannot use for purification. Yeah, drinking is the lowest bar. Then you have cleaning because there are things which you can drink which you cannot use for cleaning. Drinking, cleaning, and then you have the highest bar for ritual purification. All of it is allowed now. Or what a horse drinks from, or an animal whose meat is halal. All of these, their saliva is not considered impure. Their saliva is not considered impure. The reason for singling out a horse, initially, the fatwa was that horse is makruh to eat. Horse is makruh to eat because it is used, it has a military use, or it had a military use. It was used in warfare. So it was considered makruh to eat, something which you would use, which has another use. But that no longer is the case, and there are many parts um, of the Muslim world, especially in Central Asia, where horse meat is consumed. Um, and And it is halal. It is halal. But initially it was considered makruh because it was used in warfare. Um, so basically the point being the saliva of the human being and the saliva of any animal which is halal to eat, animal which is halal to eat is pure. Is pure. So long as there is no impurity present, which will then then the water which the person or the animal has drunk from will become impure because of that impurity, not because of the person or the animal. Okay. The second type is filthy water, which is not permissible to use. Now, this is not just that it's not allowed for purification, the water itself becomes filthy, impure. Why? The water from which that is a dog or a pig or a predatory land animal such as cheetah or fox or wolf have drunk from. Now, and not only that, with regards to the pig, any part of the pig which now touches the water makes the water now impure because all of the pig is impure. All of the pig is impure. Wallahu ta'ala alam. But a dog or any predatory land animal, its saliva is impure. Its saliva is impure. Now, the third type is water that is disliked to use in the presence of plain water, i.e., fresh water. Meaning, if you have fresh water which is available, then it becomes disliked to use this water. Okay? Otherwise, there is no dislike. It's not makruh. This is the leftover water of a cat or a stray chicken or a predatory bird such as an eagle or a falcon, as well as animals that tend to be located in and around the home, such as a rat or a snake. Though there is no dislike in using the leftover water of a scorpion, I'll have to check on that for the reason for that, inshallah ta'ala. Um, but the point being, these are so the leftover water of a cat is disliked only if you do not know what the cat has eaten. If the cat is something, if the cat roams around, it's free to roam around and hunt. So now you do not know whether the cat has eaten something um, just before it's going to drink from the water which you have in your house. So it came from outside and drank the water now. So now this water is disliked for you to use if you have other water which you can use for wudu and ghusl. Why? Because you do not know the cat might have just eaten a mouse. If the cat comes home with a mouse dangling from its mouth and then drinks the water, now it's no longer disliked. It's najis now. It's impure because there was the impurity present in the mouth of the cat, in the mouth of the cat. But if you do not know, then it's disliked. But if you know, it's not disliked. For example, the cat never leaves your house. You always keep it in your house and you feed it pure food, food that you eat. So now there is no dislike. So it depends on the scenario. So the leftover water of a cat is disliked if you do not know what it has eaten. If you know it has eaten something impure, then the water becomes impure. If you know that it has not eaten anything impure, only the pure food which you feed it, then khalas, then the water is pure. That is again the same thing with the stray chicken. The reason for the stray chicken is because it is free to roam and one cannot be sure if it has eaten something filthy or not. And chicken pens generally tend to be filthy. Now, and predatory birds such as eagle and falcon, why? Again, because they hunt and they eat other animals, which the impurity. But the difference between them and predatory animals is they have beaks, and beaks, so long as they're dried, they're pure. There's no saliva on their beaks. So it's disliked, not considered impure as in the first category. Now, as well as like um, 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 animals such as rats or snake. And these things I'll check up on that inshallah ta'ala. The fourth type of water which is suspect or doubtful with regards to purity is again, as you mentioned previously, that which has uh, a donkey or a mule has drunk from. So what do you do in such a case? You're doubtful whether this water can be used or not. In the previous scenario, it's disliked. It's disliked if you have other fresh water available. But even if you did use this water, then it's still fine. Your wudu or ghusl is still fine. But it's disliked with karaha. It's makruh. But here, you're doubtful whether it's valid or not. This is the difference. It's not disliked. It's doubtful. You don't know whether it's valid or not. So what do you do? If there is no other water available, then one is permitted to make ablution with this type and then make tayammum followed by prayer. So you do wudu with this water and then you do tayammum. Then you do tayammum. Why? Because if this was invalid, then you're covered by your tayammum. And if this was valid, then khalas, you're good. Okay, because it's not clear from the evidences that we have whether this water which has been drunk from by a donkey or a mule, whether it is pure or not. These kind of things we might think these are all not very relevant to us, no doubt. But most of the people, most people are not urban people. Most people in the world, even till this day, are rural people, are people who live rural lives, and for them, all of these things are very relevant. So this is relevant to most of the people, many of the people at the very least, who still live rural lives, who still live rural lives. Any questions? Any questions? And also, and we have pets in our houses. There many a times we may have cats um, in our houses. So again, you need to know what is permissible and what is not. Now, what do you do if the cat stuck ate something from your dish, from your food, or from your water, or whatever? Now, khairan inshallah ta'ala. We'll finish here. We'll finish here with fiqh and continue the next section next week inshallah ta'ala. And we'll do our dua and continue with Aqidah. The first class of the month is Aqidah, belief, isn't it? So we'll continue with that inshallah ta'ala. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم يا عظيم السلطان يا قديم الإحسان يا دائم النعم يا كثير الجود يا واسع العطاء يا خفي اللطف يا جميل الصنع يا حليما لا يعجل صل يا ربي على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم وارض عن الصحابة أجمعين اللهم لك الحمد شكرا ولك المن فضلا وأنت ربنا حقا ونحن عبيدك رقا وأنت لم تزل لذلك أهلا يا ميسر كل عسير ويا جابر كل كسير ويا صاحب كل فريد ويا مغني كل فقير ويا مقوي كل ضعيف ويا مأمن كل مخيف يسر علينا كل عسير فتيسير العسير عليك يسير اللهم يا من لا يحتاج إلى البيان والتفسير حاجاتنا كثير وأنت عالم بها وخبير اللهم إني أخاف منك وأخاف ممن يخاف منك وأخاف ممن لا يخاف منك اللهم بحق سيدنا محمد احرسنا بعينك التي لا تنام واكنفنا بكنفك الذي لا يرام وارحمنا بقدرتك علينا فلا نهلك وأنت ثقتنا ورجاؤنا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته اللهم إنا نسألك زيادة في الدين وبركة في العمر وصحة في الجسد وساعة في الرزق وتوبة قبل الموت وشهادة عند الموت ومغفرة بعد الموت وعفوا عند الحساب وأمانا من العذاب ونصيبا من الجنة وارزقنا النظر إلى وجهك الكريم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين، عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. Now, Bismillah, before we start our Aqidah, just a second. Nah, um, just like to mention that we started the new batch of the Tajweed course yesterday. We had our intro session. You'll be able to access that. Um, it's been shared, I think, in the community group of the E-Tilawah Academy. So if you're interested, inshallah ta'ala, have a listen to the intro session and see if you're interested, and make use of the opportunity, inshallah ta'ala. It is a unique opportunity for to be able to learn the recitation from scratch all the way, covering everything that you need to know with regards to the recitation of the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. So inshallah ta'ala, if you're interested, have a look at the intercession and also share with others bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Also share with others bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Let us continue. Let us continue where we left off with regards to Aqidah. Now, we we mentioned that Aqidah is the science through which we affirm our religious beliefs by the means of clear and absolute proofs. Um, and the benefit of studying the science of Aqidah is what that our beliefs become unwavering and unflinching, and thereby we become successful in the hereafter and of sound thought and character in this life. Our belief enables us to live lives of uprightness and piety, inshallah ta'ala, on the basis of which we seek the pleasure of our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we mentioned that the study of Aqidah is subdivided into three main topics. One is ilahiyat, which is divinity, the study of what we believe with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the basis of what has been revealed to us through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on the basis of what we and on the basis of our intellects now. And then you have a prophecy, nubuwat, what we believe with regards to the Prophets alayhimussalam, with regards to their characteristics and attributes. Um, and then you have sam'iyat, which is eschatology, which is to do with the unseen, which is to do with the hereafter, which is to do with primarily to do with the hereafter, and also to a certain degree the end times, things which are yet to manifest, which are from the unseen. Now, today's discussion, inshaAllah ta'ala, what we are going to talk about is what are the sources of knowledge? Um, what are the different sources of knowledge that we have? How is it that we know about things as human beings? What are the means at our disposal, which through which we obtain knowledge, through which we obtain information? Now, as human beings, we have three sources of knowledge. Now, three sources of knowledge. One are our senses, our five senses. Now, what are our five senses? We have our sight, we have our hearing, we have our smell, we have taste, and we have touch. The five senses. Through these five senses, we learn about things in our physical environment. Our five senses, using these five senses, we learn about things in our physical environment. Um, and then you have um, khabar. Khabar literally translates as news or um, anything, any information which is passed on. Naam. Um, let us say, this is sensory now, and this is um, news. News, in the sense, anything which has been conveyed to us, transmitted. Now, anything which, so for example, now, um, I assume none of us has been to Antarctica. I'm assuming that. I don't know if you have. Is there anyone here who does not believe that Antarctica exists? Is there anyone here who thinks that there's no such thing called Antarctica? Bismillah, if there is some interaction, it is good. Khalas, like this is from the adab, that when your teacher speaks to you, that you respond. Now, Bismillah. Does anyone believe that there is no such thing called Antarctica?
No, as in
Hello? Yes?
Islam,
Because
as in Antarctica exists. Does it?
exists. Yeah, but have you been there?
No,
Have you seen it?
kind of
What do you
on
mean, kind of?
like TV or you know.
Yeah, but in TV you see a lot.
Global.
Anything you can see anything, isn't it? Have you seen Wakanda on TV?
Yes,
Yes. Do you
yes.
believe Wakanda exists?
No, no.
No. So the point is, you have you have taken some information which has been given to you in good faith and accepted that to be the truth. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. Now, so that is news. That is khabar. That is khabar. Okay. And then you have your intellect. Now, our intellect. Now, which is your rational knowledge. Now, rational knowledge. So, for example, 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. Is it possible for anyone to convince you that 1 plus 1 is not 2? Is it possible? It's not possible. No one can convince you that 1 plus 1 is not 2. Why? Because this is something which your intellect will refuse to accept. This is something which your intellect, you cannot, there is no way anyone can convince you that 1 plus 1 is not 2. These kind of judgments, and judgment like, for example, is it possible for you to fill 10 liters of water in a jar, a 5-liter jar? Is it possible for you to pour 10 liters of water into a 5-liter jar? Is it possible? Yes or no? It's not possible. It's not. Why? Because your intellect cannot accept that something small, something bigger can fit into something smaller. It is not possible. Your intellect so these are things which your intellect arrives at, which you cannot accept. So for example, if you enter so for example, if you see a car, is it possible that your intellect can accept that this just happened by itself without any cause whatsoever? It just popped into existence without any cause or anything for that matter. The intellect refuses to accept this. Like even and even the most uh, um, nascent of intellects, even the small child has just started observing, a baby which has just started observing the world around it. Now, if it were to hear a sound, it'll turn towards the sound. Why? Because even in that nascent level of intellect, it's just begun exploring the world around it. It knows within in and of itself that this, what I've heard, must have a cause, must have a source, and it goes and looks towards the source. Now, likewise with light, if you switch on the light, look at the light. Now, it does not assume that things just happen by itself. The intellect cannot accept this. Now, so these are our three sources of knowledge. What is the strongest? What is the strongest source of our knowledge? The strongest source of our knowledge is our intellect. But at the same time, it, as human beings, our intellect is not infallible. Our intellect is not, we can commit mistakes. Now, I'm the human being. First and foremost, our intellect is limited. Now, our intellect is not unlimited. Our intellect is limited. Now, we are limited by the constraints which we find ourselves in this life. Secondly, our intellect um, um, is biased, is biased in accordance to our experience. Now, our intellects are biased. Thirdly, our intellects can make mistakes as well. How many times have we changed our mind or something? How many times we have changed our mind or something, or someone else has convinced us that what contrary to our what we thought to be right. Now, so the human mind has constraints. Even then, even though it is our strongest source of knowledge. Now, transmitted news. Now, khabar. Now, this is the one which we use the most in our lives. This is the one which we use the most in our lives. Even though people consider this something, many times it's looked down upon with scorn, it is that which allows us to function as human beings in our societies. Because most of the things that you take for as scientific fact, have you tested them yourself? Did you, for example, water boils at 100 degrees centigrade at 1 atmospheric pressure or at sea level pressure? Has any of you tested this? Has any of you tested it? No, I assume no. But do you dispute it? No. Why? Khalas, you take it, you accept it because khalas, these are things. which we collectively have agreed that this is something which has been verified and known to be true. Even though I myself have not done it. If I have done it, then that would become sensory knowledge for me. That would become scientific knowledge for me, knowledge which I have done experimentation and I have verified it with empirical evidence. But as it relates to me, it is news. It's transmitted knowledge. I have not personally verified it. Likewise, so for example, 1 plus 1 is 2. All of us can come to that conclusion now, rationally. But say someone doesn't know multiplication, okay? And if you tell them that 15 15s are 225, okay? And they are not able to come to this conclusion by themselves, they take it from you. Even though the asl, originally it's completely rational that 15 says 225. You don't need any other proof. So long as you can figure out how much 15 are, you don't need any additional proof for that. So many a times, so most of our knowledge is from the second category. Now, so for example, how do you know your uncle is your uncle, your aunt is your aunt, your father is your father, your mother is your mother? All of these things, how do you know? You know because you've the, your life experience has allowed you to come to this conclusion that this is the truth. And everyone around you. Naam. So this is khabar sadiq, truthful news. News which you accept without any doubt. So you do not live your life in the doubt that, maybe this is not true. Maybe this is not true. In that case, you will not be able to function as a human being. In that case, you will not be able to function as a human being. Which is why many of the philosophers, what happened to them? Because of their skepticism, which is they ended up in mental asylums. Because they questioned that which is beyond reasonable doubt. We do not question that which is beyond reasonable doubt. Now, so if you have reasonable doubt to question something, then you question it, because then not to question it is unreasonable. But when you do not have reasonable doubt to question that, so for example, I've not seen Antarctica. Everything is a sham. Everyone's been lying to me. Is that a reasonable position to hold? It's not a reasonable position to hold. Now, so this is why news, this khabar, now transmitted knowledge is important, so long as you understand what is the basis on which you believe in it. What is the basis on which you accept or reject transmitted knowledge? Now, and this transmitted knowledge can never contradict our rational knowledge. Now, if someone were to come and tell you, even if all the people in the world were to tell you 1 plus 1 is 3, you'd never believe it. You'd never accept it. Even if all the people in the world were to tell you that. Why? Because it can never go against your intellect. It can never go against your intellect. Now, as for your sensory knowledge, now again, sensory knowledge is subject to our senses are not perfect. Now, there are limitations to our senses. Generally speaking, animals have far greater sensory perception than us. They can see better, they can hear better, they can smell better. They are much more receptive to physical stimuli than us. Naam. But at the same time, our senses enable us to basically what is the realm of to obtain scientific knowledge, to observe the world around us and try to make sense of it, to observe the world around us and see patterns and understand or try to understand the mechanisms, the laws which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed, um, has put in place. So these are all the different sources of knowledge which we as human beings have. And the knowledge of a religion for us comes through transmission and it correlates with our intellect. For the Sahaba, it was not news. They saw it with their own eyes, they heard it with their own ears. Now, for them, it was first hand. For those after, it was news, transmitted news. And thereby, you need to know on what basis we accept or do not accept that which has been transmitted. Huh? Because to accept anything and everything, anyone will, yeah, khalas, that is not the religion, that you accept anything and everything. La, like Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, لَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادُ لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ مَا شَاءَ. If not for verification, if not for the chains of transmission, anyone can say anything. Anyone can say anything. Now, so these are the different sources of knowledge. Our five senses, which opens the door to scientific knowledge. Our intellect, which opens the door to rational knowledge. And these are two different things. This is one of the problems which we face. One of the biggest problems which we face is that people want to find scientific justification for religion. Now, science has its place and rationality has its place. Now, rationality does not require scientific evidence. It cannot. So, for example, 1 plus 1 equal to 2. You do not prove it using like to say I need to prove it scientifically in order to accept it. I need to take one apple and another apple. And I see that now I have two apples. So now I accept that 1 plus 1 is 2. This is ridiculous. So for someone to say, if I said it's not rationally possible that you pour 10 liters of water into a 5-liter container. The other person says, have you tried it? No. So your claim is unscientific. You have to try it first. And then once you have established it through experimentation, then I will accept what you're saying. No, this is ridiculous. Why is this ridiculous? Because rationality is not in the realm of experimentation. Experimentation is for things which you cannot figure out using your intellect. That which you need to experiment and see what happens, and on the basis of which try to understand, possibly this is why it is happening, or that is why it is happening. Does that make sense? Rationality is that which cannot be either affirmed or refuted by your senses. There is nothing which you will observe in the world which is going to contradict 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Okay, there is nothing which is you are going to observe in the natural world which is going to say that you can have an effect without a cause. You can have something without a cause. You can have an effect without a cause. Um, or that something big can fit into something small. Now, these kind of things are they cannot be proven scientifically, and they do not require scientific evidence. And that which you require scientific, and science is not rational. Okay, one needs to understand science is not rational. That which you determine scientifically is not rational, is not based on the intellect. If it were based on the intellect, then you don't need to do the experiment, because it is possible that the experiment can give you many different outcomes. That is why you do the experiment, because rationally different outcomes are possible, and you do not know which outcome is likely, which outcome is the one which will happen. So you do the experiment. Rationally, there are different outcomes possible. So that which you need scientific knowledge for, you cannot arrive using your intellect. So, for example, um, there is a fire burning, and you use water to put out this fire. If I did not know that water puts out fire, there is no way for me to intellectually arrive at this conclusion. I would not know, does water put out fire? Does vinegar put out fire? Does kerosene put out fire? Does diesel put out fire? I would not know any of these things. I would know these only through experimentation, having done the experiment, and then seen the result. Okay? There's nothing intellectual about it. There's nothing intellectual about it. It is trial and error. You do and you see what the outcome is, on the basis of which you try to understand why that outcome manifested. That is science. So science and intellect are two distinct domains of knowledge. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yes or no?
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah, and that is why we don't have a problem with miracles at all. Why? Because these quote unquote laws of science can be suspended. There is nothing inherent about fire that it burns. There is nothing inherent. So for example, there is nothing inherent about hydrogen atom that it is highly inflammable. What is hydrogen atom? Is just one proton around which an electron revolves. It's just one proton and one electron. There is nothing inherent about it that it must be it's highly inflammable. Khalas. The rules which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put into place in this world dictate that it will behave in that manner, generally speaking. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can suspend that at any time. Now, so the fact that water quenches thirst, this is again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed it as such. There is nothing inherent in two atoms of hydrogen attached to one atom of oxygen that it must quench thirst. There is nothing inherent about creation. Everything is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed it to be as such. He can suspend it whenever He sees fit. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put these rules in place so that we are able to live as a mercy. These rules which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these laws, imagine things are all just random. So say one time fire burns, the other time it cools, the other time it does nothing, the other time it does something else. All of these are possible. There's no problem in that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make all of that happen. But if that were the case, then khalas, no life would be possible. Because there would be no way for us to make use of our surroundings to live. Unless we know, we are able to predict what will happen when we do X, Y, and Z. So these rules have been put in place to allow for life to exist in the first place. So one day is 24 hours long, the other day is 50 hours long, the other day is a month long. Khalas, everything has been put in place such that life can exist. Life can exist, this order, this design of the universe. But At the same time, the intellect cannot be overruled. Now, miracles manifest in the sensory realm, not in the rational realm. Which is why for us it's very clear. It's very easy for us to make sense. And this is perfectly rational. Fire does not burn in and of itself. It could do something else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it as such. That normally speaking, that's what it will do. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can cause it to do something else. Like when Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire, Kuni bardan wa salaman li Ibrahim. Be cool and be a source of safety for Ibrahim alayhi salam. And hakada it was. Why? But because this does not override our intellect, our rationality. Because this is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the entire world and everything in it, and He placed order in things in how they would function normally, and at any time He can suspend that order for anything. Yeah? So there is no problem in that. But the point being, these are our sources of knowledge, our senses, our senses, which opens the door to science and the scientific realm, our intellect, which opens the door to the rational realm, and all news that we hear, all information that we get is from the transmitted realm. Now, be it from this, be and revelation is from that. For us, revelation is from transmission. And the other thing is that rationality is universal. Rationality is universal. Rationality is universal. Now, can now rational judgments can never be suspended. Now, the rational judgments can never be suspended or overruled. Whereas sense that which you know through the sensory realm, now, or scientific knowledge, say or let's say customary judgments. Customary judgments, as in this is how normally things work. Customary judgments can be suspended. Can be suspended. Now, it is possible that customary judgments can be suspended. And revelation or correct standing of revelation can never predict correct rationality. Now, revelation and rationality can never contradict. Now, because they say al-aqlu hujja min hujjatillah. والوحي حجة من حجة الله وحجج الله تعالى لا تتعارض. That our intellect is a proof from the proofs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is a proof for us, is a tool that we use for us to make sense of everything, not just the physical world, But the grand scheme of things, everything. Now, intellect is for us one of the greatest tools, the greatest means by which we arrive at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise, revelation is also of the greatest means through which we arrive at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And both of these means have been given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and as such, it is not possible that these means contradict with each other. As such, it is not possible that these means contradict with each other. How is that your intellect tells you something and your revelation tells you something? That means there is a problem. There is a problem with either revelation or with your intellect. Either what you claim to be revelation is not really revelation, or either what you claim to have arrived at using your intellect is incorrect. Or it is possible both are incorrect, hypothetically. But the point being, true revelation and correct understanding of true revelation and proper application of intellect do not contradict with each other. They will always be in conformance, which is why one of the primary sciences, one of the first sciences that we learn in a Sharia program, when you learn the sciences of the religion, of the first sciences that you learn is mantiq, logic, so that you preserve your intellect, yeah, from um, خطأ صومي عن الخطأ, from being in from arriving at incorrect conclusions, arriving at incorrect conclusions. So for today, I think this is the most important thing that we need to take away, that we have different sources of knowledge and how they interact with each other. And most of our knowledge is transmitted, even in our day-to-day life. Even if you say whatever, you're trained as a doctor or an engineer or whatever it is, if you're trained as a doctor, all of the knowledge that you have, how much of it did you actually test it out yourself? Pretty much all of it, unless you specifically did research on a particular topic, even then, but all of your knowledge is transmitted. None of it it might be scientific. There might be scientific basis for it, but as it relates to you, it's all transmitted. Now, any questions? So I think that is enough for today, inshallah ta'ala. Naam, that is enough for today, inshallah ta'ala. Any questions before we finish? Any questions before we finish?
No questions.
Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. We'll finish here and continue بإذن ta'ala next week. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وفقهنا إذا جهلنا وارزقنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا خالصا لوجهك الكريم وافتح علينا فتوح العارفين والحقنا بعبادك الصالحين واجعلنا من خدمة هذا الدين وجزى الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ما هو أهله وجزاكم الله كل خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.